Welcome to Piano Inspires podcast, celebrating pianists, teachers, and innovators as they share their inspiring stories about the transformative power of music.
Are you ready to take your piano journey to the next level? Introducing the pianoinspires.com subscription. With the pianoinspires.com subscription, you'll gain access to hundreds of teaching videos and webinars by experts in our field. This wide variety of topics is perfect for teachers, students, new professionals, advanced performers, and amateur pianists. These videos will inspire and guide you every step of the way. But that's not all. Your subscription also includes access to Piano Magazine. Dive into each issue packed with the most dynamic content, expert interviews, music, and book reviews, and more to keep you connected with the piano community. Check out pianoinspires.com today and unlock a world of piano teaching, learning, and performing. For more information, visit pianoinspires.com/subscribe and use coupon code podcast15 and subscribe today for less than $3 per month. Thanks for listening to the Piano Inspires podcast and enjoy the episode.
Well, welcome and thank you for joining me in today's Francis Clark Center podcast with Dr. Barbara Fast. My name is Pamela Pike, and I am the editor-in-chief of the Piano Magazine. And it is my great honor to be sitting here with you, Dr. Fast. You have this extensive biography, and I think it would take us so long to read it. I'm just going to give highlights. I'm sure many of our viewers know you. But for those who don't, Barbara Fast serves on the piano faculty at the University of Oklahoma, where she is professor emeritus. So I'm sure we will discuss what you're doing now that you've quote unquote retired. Dr. Fast is a winner of many teaching awards, including the prestigious David Ross Boyd Professor Award for Excellence in Teaching. That was just in 2020. And in 2014, an OU Regents Award for Superior Teaching. And her teaching, I think, has been informed by her curiosity and her quest for information and research on teaching and learning. I think a highlight would be her Oxford book publication in 2018 called I Practice: Technology in the 21st Century Music Practice Room. She's presented all over the world at conferences. She has publications in many of our major journals and magazines. She's performed in Russia and the UK, many other countries, and of course, she's well known across our country here in the US as a wonderful workshop presenter. So I would encourage you to visit her website and check out her biography and some of her publications and see her workshops in person if you can. So Barbara, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Pam. It's an honor to be here. An honor.
Well, you know, we're really interested, I think, and I'm interested in some of the background that brought you to this place. You know, you're obviously an outstanding teacher. You're an amazing colleague. But what made you so curious, you know? So I wonder if you might talk a little about your background in music in childhood. Was there music in your home? I know you have a brother who's a professional musician, so I imagine there was, but what would you like to share with us?
Yeah. Well, you surmised correctly, Pam. I grew up in a family and a community where I was literally surrounded with music. My mother was a flute teacher, and I grew up Mennonite and I grew up on a farm. Mm-hmm. So Mennonites traditionally have a very strong choral tradition. I grew up, you know, everyone sang, that kind of thing. So my mother in particular made sure I had a really good piano teacher, and they drove and I will talk about that piano teacher who really informed so many things in my life. My father was a farmer, but also, you know, he loved singing. He sang in the 500 men's choir sort of thing. He also played trumpet. And I grew up, and he could play piano, just kind of improvise. And so our family gatherings, I think they were so influential. On my mother's side at Christmas time, we would all gather in an aunt's house and we would gather around a piano and we would all sing.
Mm.
And they had an organ and a piano in their home. So, I mean, that was just very memorable on my father's side at Christmas time. We would all gather like in a special room. There'd be a piano. The kids could not get any Christmas treats until they performed.
Wow.
I know. And it wasn't only the kids performing, and then all the aunts and uncles would perform. So I distinctly remember an aunt and uncle who were just wonderful singers. And I just recently found out one of my dad's brothers played accordion and sang in his church. I never knew that. So there was, and I had an aunt who did a master's degree in piano, which was very unusual at that time.
Mhm.
So I just grew up surrounded by music. And I think growing up on a farm, my parents got a grand piano. I don't know how they did that early on, but I grew up with Etude magazines stacked up on the floor.
Mhm.
Remember Etude?
I do.
Yeah. And Etude was fabulous, because I could open that and read beginning pieces, intermediate pieces. So I had all this music to sight read. And I got through school with, I went to a 3-room grade school, and people go, "You did?" And I went, "It was the best thing that ever happened in my life." Teachers were so committed to teaching. We had all kinds of music going on. Maybe in second grade, I was playing for a musical,
Mhm.
There were no professional, as we think of professional musicians around. So early on, I was playing in church, accompanying this, accompanying that. And I was so fortunate.
And it strikes me that you had all of these opportunities to do this independent learning and explore
Yes.
in a space where that was valued, but
Very
it was
much.
also a safe space, it
Oh,
sounds like.
oh yeah, very, very much. And because my mother was a flute teacher, I started playing flute very young. So one of the, I did flute and piano equally,
Mhm.
equally growing up
Mhm.
to the point that I double majored
Mhm.
in flute and
Mhm.
piano as an undergrad. So that influence of just music, my brother, New York Philharmonic, and brothers who all majored in 3 brothers who majored in music.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I know. So there was just a lot of music making,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of music making.
And then maybe talk about those first teachers, piano and flute,
Right.
prior to college. How
That-
did those experiences
Well,
impact your trajectory?
Yeah, particularly Mrs. Ferdvoth. I thought if she knew how much she influenced me, I could almost start crying about it. What I really remember, number one, she had 2 pianos, and she just gave me endless music to sight read. So I'd walk home with just so much music to sight read. I think I played through every method available at the time. I only know when I started doing a history of piano methods, I realized some of it I was just sight reading, but I had acquaintance with it. What I took away as the foundations of her teaching was what I call this, the wrist roll and kind of big arm motions, circular motions. That was very carefully taught. And that really influenced me to the point when during my master's, they just happened to bring in Joan Last, Freedom Technique
Mm-hmm.
from the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, she was just talking about the same things very much in those Freedom Technique books that I'd kind of grown up with, to the point that, skip ahead many decades and years teaching group piano. I have been very committed, and I love teaching level 1 group piano because I can teach all this at an early level.
And, so what I'm hearing as you talk about this is phrasing and shape and musicality. And I wonder how much of your experiences with flute and choral singing,
Oh,
it must have must have been a synergy there.
yeah. What the choral singing, it is so funny about that because I didn't really like to sing, but the reality was I just didn't like it as much as my flute and piano on it. Yeah. And so I was so happy every time I was in a choir, they would just put me at the piano. I said, "Please put me at the piano." And they did, because that was what I really loved.
Mhm.
And I've always said, "Oh, I don't like my voice. I don't like to sing." But the reality is, one of the favorite genres of music I listen to is choral music.
Mm.
And I have my special sorts of choral groups I like to listen to. So I really, in the end, I really love choral music. Yeah. Even though I was really focused on the instrumental part of it.
So, if I skip through anything that you think is important, because, I'm going to sort of take you through your life, how'd you get where you are today kind of thing. So, but let's maybe move on to music school and what that looked like. You mentioned you double majored.
Yes. Yeah. So one of the most difficult things for me throughout my whole, I felt like most of my life, was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I got to undergrad and it was flute and piano. But I thought, maybe I want to major in literature because I loved reading. I had parents who supported it. In the town where I took my piano lessons, there was the Carnegie Library, and I read at least 6 books a week, maybe more. I just read through the entire library. And I just loved literature. I had wonderful lit teachers in high school. So I just debated, maybe I want to, major in, English. And I would often skip ahead to OU years. I would often tell my grad students, I'm 2 hours short of a lit degree. I was saying that so often, I finally called Bethel College and said, and this was about 3 years ago, I finally called them and said, can you look at I knew they could look at my academic records and tell me what degrees do I have? And I said, I'm really curious. And they said, you have an English minor. So I changed my bio. I put English minor in my bio because I had been kind of claiming it all along on the side on it. So I just couldn't decide what to do. And then I also couldn't decide about, should I do social work? That was a big thing at the time at Bethel College where I went. And in my sophomore year, I did 1 semester working in a halfway house. And I thought, nope, I miss practicing too much.
Right.
Yeah. And so that was just very informative. Try out the things. And, I really feel when I'm working with students, you are going to have failures in life. You're going to try out things, but they are what is going to inform you in your life. Your failures become they help you become who you are. You've got to have some failures to become who you are. You just have to.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is such an important point, and they help us, as you mentioned, discover we think we're interested in something, but when we see what that really involves, we realize, no, something else means more to us. Where do we want to spend our valuable time?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, when I think back, so the whole, I decided very late on, and I thought, I don't even know if I want to, I have such a crazy story. I got to, it was the 70s when I did my undergrad degree, and I got to college and I had to take theory. I thought, I don't like theory. And we had to do sight singing, and I didn't actually like to sing. And I thought, I actually approached my professor. I mean, it was such a stupid thing. I approached my professor and said, can I just play my flute instead of sight sing? I mean, what was I thinking? I saw him recently and I said, do you remember me asking you that question?
I bet he did.
Well, he said, I have forgotten all the ridiculous questions that students asked me. So, oh my gosh. But very late, I decided, okay, I'm going to finish the music degree, double major. I did my master's degree in piano. And the only reason I went on, I thought, I don't know, I would not be able to teach myself a new piece. I need to just study more piano. Doing the master's, I couldn't give up the flute. So I was driving to another university 2-3 hours away to study flute. And I completely changed my embouchure, which takes a lot of work. I actually I had a GA in flute while I was doing my master's in piano. I actually played a Vivaldi concerto with the orchestra. I mean, what was I doing?
Well, you've always been a high achiever, and you still are.
I don't know. But it was part of this. I just can't make up my mind.
Right.
I could not make up my mind how and where to focus. And then if we move on to teaching in India, should I just keep talking?
I think you should. Yes. This is a very important part of your story, I think.
Yes, it really is. So, conferences have been very important in my life. And so I was attending a conference, and an undergrad professor just said, Barbara, have you ever thought about teaching in India? And I said, well, I didn't.
Those are two different questions.
I know. And I didn't even know where India was at the time. But I was very interested in teaching abroad, just traveling abroad, being abroad.
Mm-hmm.
And I just said yes. And he said, well, he had just been notified there was this job opening, and so I was interested. And then I thought, oh, there are other international schools around the world. I got a book. There was no internet at the time. And I applied to 50 schools around the world. I thought, and I could have taught in Japan or India. I chose Japan. I chose India because the job, I was going to be on a faculty and I would not be teaching after school. That was my only reason I wanted to be on a faculty. And I thought, yeah, that really informed my choice of, all the ups and downs of being on a faculty. And, I early on made that choice, very early on made that choice. And that was life-changing because they had an incredible music. It was boarding school, first grade through high school. Incredible music faculty. I just got so lucky. Another faculty did flute and piano. Another faculty, a wonderful cellist and violist, and then his wife was also piano. And because I had a master's, I had the highest degree there. They gave me the best piano students, even though I wasn't that experienced. And so I had students playing concertos with the high school orchestra. How lucky could I get? And we did all kinds of chamber music. And I ended up playing flute with the Delhi Symphony. There were two of us. We'd play first and second flute trade-off. And I played a concerto with the flute concerto with the Delhi Symphony. And I tell people, I've played a flute concerto with symphony, but never a piano concerto with symphony. So it's like, I just have the weirdest story.
But you're open. I mean, I think you were open to these experiences and opportunities.
They were just fun on it. They were just fun. And I think the best part of the international school, they had a British and American system. So I was just around a lot of Canadians, a lot of Brits, some Americans, not that many, New Zealand, and then Indian from India. So it just that, and if you were happy teaching there, everyone had this adventurous spirit of just, you either loved it or hated it. And it was in this incredible setting in the Himalaya Mountains, 8,000 feet. And I got into a lot of hiking and that.
Wow. Yeah. So, this is the other thing that strikes me. I mean, I know you love to travel. I know, this, but culture and the context you're in you've always been influenced by that. And I think that's so important as a musician too. And probably in terms of colleagues you're working with, students you're working with, there's probably nothing to say about that, or there may be, but I don't know, it just strikes me that you've always adapted to your place.
Right.
But you've been thoughtful about where you choose to take those opportunities.
Yeah. I really feel at this point in life and experiencing so many different cultures, and particularly India. When I got there, I knew nothing. And oh my gosh, so there was a folk culture of music, but they had their own long tradition of classical music.
Yes, that's true.
And that was just, I thought, how lucky am I to be in a country with their own very long tradition, longer than ours in the West, as deeply developed as ours, completely different than ours.
It is.
Completely different. And we had an Indian, Ajit Singh, Indian music teacher. He met the Beatles when they came over. I mean, just an incredible musician. So I studied Indian flute, did some performing with him as best I could, but just all of that, was just such an eye-opener to the world.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to leave? And then, obviously you came back to the States and we're grateful. But then you would have pursued a doctorate and higher ed wasn't necessarily a linear journey for you either.
No, it wasn't. I came back. I was there 3 years and had not come back during that time. And it was pre-internet.
Yes.
There was pre-internet. It was just, airmail. And I could see the image of home got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, because I was immersed in India. And either I could stay on for 2 years or come back. And I thought, I need to, everything is getting, I can hardly remember home anymore. It just felt like it was probably, I should just do it. I got very fortunate and got invited to teach one semester adjunct at my old, at Bethel College. Someone was on a sabbatical. That was just fortune. And that community is where I grew up. I mean, it's just a wonderful, a lot of music making happening very close to Wichita. And so I started a studio during that time, and then also got on at Heston College, 2 years school. And that really, and I ran this huge studio at that time. And in a way that really, in addition to teaching at Heston, but in a way that big studio of really good students, I could put them in concerto competitions. Newton was close to Hutchinson, close to Wichita, and I could be a member and enter students in both on it. And yeah, I didn't realize I was getting connected to organizations, but I know that Newton was connected to MTNA at the time. I hardly knew what MTNA was. But I had, we had a little meetings, and it was kind of fun to get together with teachers and share ideas. And I remember thinking, I have so many ideas that we could do as a group. And in the second year, they said, would you be president? And I said, yes. And it didn't even seem like a job. It just like, oh, I have all these ideas. I can do all these things I want to do. I mean, it was less organized than things are now on it. But, I didn't realize I was getting involved in organizations. But I definitely was. I was putting students in competitions. They were winning, that kind of thing. So particularly that having this incredible group of students really, really influenced me pedagogically. And then it was like kind of what to do with your life on it. When I finally made the decision that rather than trying to keep improving performance on it, Barbara, just go after the teaching. And I always say, well, everybody can teach on it. But when I finally decided to pursue teaching, everything sort of fell into place on it. And I can remember thinking, I remembered growing up, when I would come home from school, my dad had built, he knew I would come home and play school. And I think, what were you doing, Barbara? He built this huge blackboard. And I'd come home and stand in front of the blackboard and I can still envision my row of students. There were 3 rows and they went that deep, and I would teach. I would pretend teach.
Same thing.
Are you serious?
I am serious.
Oh my gosh. And when I realized that, it was like, Barbara, that's your passion. You were choosing to play teach on it. And I wasn't necessarily play teaching how to teach piano. I was play teaching a group.
Yeah.
And when as I've thought back on it, Barbara, when you got to group teaching, which is my thing, I absolutely love it. I went, well, you were play teaching that as a child. Obviously, it's a natural passion of yours. And I think for me, teaching group piano, a lot of people go, oh, who wants to teach group piano at the beginning? That was my favorite. And I think I could vicariously live out my flute life, because I'd get these students coming in, and I mean, I was a good flutist when I entered college, and these students in front of me, they're professional musicians already. And I really thought about that when I was teaching them. And so I had so much fun. That's why I love teaching the beginners, because teaching a staccato on piano, I could just say, oh, how do you play a staccato on flute? How do you play a staccato on trumpet? And I say, oh, well, on piano, we do this on it,
Yeah, I mean, you were aware of transfer long before probably you were thinking about it actively.
Exactly. Yeah. And then I got to work with it. And once I approached my group piano students as professionals, that just, it was fun for me. I just had so much fun with that. Yeah.
But that's such an important point. You were really seeing the student for who they were, and that's so important with adults, because they're emerging adults at that point, and then helping them grow and develop on
Yeah.
another instrument, but
Yeah.
it's just helping them to become better musicians,
Yeah.
which you were as well because you played several instruments.
Yeah,
And-
yeah.
Yeah.
It was just really fun, and then I could do things because I knew on every instrument there are the things that sound hard but are really easy, and then some things that sound very easy but are really hard.
Mhm.
So I loved on piano finding those things. Like I could say, "Oh, here's the secret when you're playing piano. This is what pianists do,"
Mhm. Mhm.
and it was just fun.
Yeah.
So I was very overt with my GAs when I teach group piano. I'm teaching piano technique. I'm doing all this stuff. I could teach it pretty easily.
Mhm.
And I was really big on teaching. I think you get people hooked through music.
Yes.
They get
Yes.
And so, yeah, we did all the technique stuff. But I really, I was big on repertoire, and I would perform for them, and I would try to knock their socks off. I wanted them to clap and just go, wow.
Mhm.
And because that motivates them.
Mhm.
So I loved kind of, I don't know, I loved just working with that, kind of getting them to play in the most advanced way with pretty easy, what we
Mhm.
consider pretty easy music.
Mhm.
you know.
So I'm going to ask sort of a pointed question because
Yeah.
I think it might be interesting to our listeners. I didn't mention this in the bio, but you are one of the co-founders of GP3. And
Oh.
if I know this story correctly, that idea developed and blossomed while you were a PhD student.
Yes.
So talk
Yes.
about the beginnings. Obviously, you saw a need, you saw an opening, but what does it take to take something from an idea in a restaurant
It was in a restaurant.
to something that 20, however many years
I know,
later
I
is
know.
just this really important conference that we
yeah.
have.
Well, I credit Michelle Conda, and it was a restaurant in Norman, a doctoral student. She said, "Barbara, have you ever thought of like running a conference?" And really, what was behind it all, and related to group piano pedagogy,
Yes.
and what was behind it all, we would come to a conference, and we were new in our jobs or trying to figure out jobs, and we would all get together over lunch and dinner, and we were just talking about, well, how are you doing this? How are you doing that? We were sharing ideas on group teaching and on teaching piano pedagogy. And we said, we're spending all our time at a conference talking about this. Why don't we just run a conference on it? So, and then she and I kind of thought about who else to pull together who would work well on it. We got a group of 4, and that started it all. And it was held at CCM for a number of years.
Yes.
And then I do have to credit, it was a ton of work running a conference, the 4 of us kind of putting on this conference every 2 years. And finally, MTNA got involved. And I'm very aware, had MTNA not gotten involved, and, particularly Brian Shepard, I worked so closely with him over the years. He's an amazing organizer. And had we not had that connection with MTNA, I don't think we could have survived. It just would have, the workload of it, we couldn't have kept it going. But obviously the idea, and I think the other thing I think worked on it was we would just get together and brainstorm, just brainstorm. Who should we bring in? And we felt pretty free to just kind of be crazy about, kind of just, and not feel like we had to do the same old. And then we would bring in really interesting speakers, So yeah, that's been a really fun thing to be involved with.
What did you learn from that experience?
Okay, and this is one thing I tell my doctoral students. I was aware, so we had a group of 4, and working together, generating ideas. I think it's really, pay attention. You've got to work with people who don't necessarily all have the same strengths, but who get along. You have to get along.
Yeah.
But you do not all want to have the same strengths. You want to have various strengths, because that is what's going to make the thing work on it. And I've noticed I love working with people and groups, and every partnership I've ever had, the reason it's worked is because the strengths, we get along really well, but the strengths aren't necessarily matched. And someone has a strength that someone else does not, and that makes it go.
Yeah. That's so important. And I'm so glad
Mhm.
you brought that up because, again, when you look at the finished product and you see whether it's a performance, a collaborative performance, or a collaborative venture like,
Mhm. Right.
GP3
Right.
or anything,
Yeah.
if you've done your job well, it looks effortless. But
Right.
we all
Right.
know the work that went into it and learning to navigate different personalities and
Mhm.
how we work together
Right.
and build on one another's strengths and weaknesses, I think must be important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's really that's a really key thing to helping things work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Barbara, what inspires you? Or over the years, what has inspired you in your life and your work?
Well, I was thinking about that question as well on it. I have to say, um, I'm going to mention my brother, Arlen Fast, New York Philharmonic, and what was going on at a certain point. He was playing with the Phil contrabassoon, and they were playing a premiere a week on it, and I was still performing chamber music at the time. I was playing with a flute, oboe, piano, and I was on piano trio. And Arlen, we're good friends, and we'd be on the phone. He goes, "Oh," he was just telling me about his practice strategies to survive. A new premiere a week, and then I was playing like a new kind of composition on it as well, and had some struggles with it. And he came home one Christmas, and I said, "Arlen, I just can't learn this." And he said, "Well, let me help you." Pulled out his computer, and he kind of went through his practice strategies. So that kind of generated the idea of practice, and hearing what he was doing, that generated I was working with another colleague, Jennifer Mishra. She was music ed, big researcher. And I said, could we do this project, research New York Philharmonic on how you practice when there are no oral models? And that just kind of one thing led to another. And I had been interested in the research on practicing anyway on it, but that just really kind of spun off into all kinds of ideas on it. So that's been a huge influence on it. I'll have to say, in kind of recent years, early on, I got involved with College Music Society, and I really enjoyed it because it was multiple
Yes.
disciplines, my double major thing. And I could just be around this broader group of musicians. And I always went to their technology seminars. Not that they were always doing different kinds of technology than what I was doing in the group piano, but it kind of kept me in the loop of what was going on. And I just enjoyed that kind of conversations. I started doing their international conferences, and they're very committed to culture, and they make a huge effort to really experience the culture, of course, which, coming from India, teaching there, I just really appreciated. And I have to say, the book actually came because we presented at CMS, So I tell my students, just get involved. Just get involved, but you can spread your wings if you want to. Go where your interests go, go where your passions lie.
Yeah, but I mean, your point about how much we learn from colleagues in other subdisciplines, and I suppose we could go beyond that, just in other disciplines in general, particularly related to teaching and learning and performing. But yeah, I mean, you've been open to that, and it's obviously nourished you and inspired you.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, you asked, I have to mention one other. After pandemic, I had missed travel so much, and I was looking around for just conferences, because I love conferences.
You do.
I do.
You do.
I do. I love the meeting people, and I was just I met some students in the hall, and I just feel serendipitous things happen. And they don't happen when you're alone.
No. You
have to go out into the world, and then serendipitous things will happen that you cannot predict. And so I have attended some IAFOR conferences, and I just remember.
What does that stand for,
It's
Barbara?
I
wrote it down.
I had written it down because it stands for International Academic Forum, and so there's other. It's higher ed.
Yes.
And I got to a conference in Portugal, and it was the first thing I could get to after pandemic. And it was education, and it wasn't just music. I remember walking into there, and I just had this feeling like, I am with my people. I am with my people. And they weren't necessarily music, but they were teachers from around the world.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, the conversations, and we were all talking about how we had coped, how we were now coping. And I just remember there was a professor from South Africa talking. I thought, I can identify exactly with what you're talking about. And you're from across the world on it. And you're not even in music. We're just teachers, committed to teaching. And I remember another instance, someone from China was talking about, he had a comment he made about students. And I thought, that could have been my comment. And you're in China making the same comment. So, I think just that, I don't know, community of education. Yeah.
I kind of think this is an unfair question, but we're asking people, is there specific music that inspires you?
Oh.
I know it's not a fair question.
Right.
All of it. The most recent thing I worked on. I don't know. Yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh. Well, I do believe that music is the language of the world. Every culture has music, and there's all kinds of different music around the world.
Can I just interject? Because we were sitting on a bus together this past summer.
Yes, we were.
And remember, we were in Latvia, maybe?
Yes,
and we asked the tour guide, who was not a musician, and she started singing these folk songs for us. Wasn't it magical? I mean, that illustrates your point perfectly.
Yeah. I was just stunned. And it was one of those, like...
And the entire bus got quiet. Oh, and we were captivated.
I know. It's one of those, like, I tell people, just go out in the world, because that was serendipitous. And Pam, we were sitting in the front of the bus.
We were so lucky.
We were so lucky. There she was.
But she was so proud to share this music with us.
I know. And she just started singing. Yeah. I just could hardly believe it.
And we kept clapping, and she kept singing more and more songs.
Yeah, I know. And this was on a bus, just a tour bus leader singing. Yeah. So really, really amazing. Yeah.
So, I don't know. Do you see the work that you have been doing for your lifetime and what continues now into your retirement? Because you haven't stopped. You're still advising some students, and your work continues. Do you see that as changing the world?
Well, there's so much discord happening in the world now, which is very upsetting, very unsettling, and all that. But, we all have different languages in different countries and different cultures. But the one thing that we have that's very universal is what you just mentioned, is music. And music is a universal language that we all do. And it's easier than learning the spoken language. You have to study the spoken language to communicate with people. But music, everyone gets it. And, we all have our special sorts of music we like. We get really picky about it. But once you think about that, we all do music on it. Yeah. I mean, I'm into the contra dance thing. And on my way back from here, I'm going to stop in Cincinnati and do Pigtown Fling, which is a contra dance weekend and it's mostly people ask me, what's the music? It's kind of bluegrass, fiddle music on it. It's a really good band, really good caller. But they also have an organization, Country Dance and Music Society. I think that's it, CDSS. So again, it's another organization, another organization. I kind of I'm paying attention to how they're dealing with membership. It's another organization because I'm involved in organizations. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's so important because, these days it feels like there are so many opportunities, and yet it feels like people are not joining or they're not seeing the value of organizations. And yet it's been part of what you've throughout your life. And you are richer for it, and your work and your music, has been richer for it.
Yeah, so many things in my life would not have happened had I not been involved. I would not have heard about that Woodstock opening had I not gone to a conference where a professor saw me.
Right.
The book would not have happened had I not been part of College Music Society. Oh my gosh, it just goes on and on. And I mean, meeting people is how things happen.
Yeah.
How do you meet people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And have those meaningful conversations
Yes.
and opportunities to learn from and with one another.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what inspires you about music?
Oh my
Or
God.
piano, or I know. And we are at the end of our time together.
Yes, exactly,
So.
exactly. Well, I think piano, it's one reason I went with it ultimately over flute. Our repertoire is so endless.
Absolutely.
It's just endless. And it is an instrument that can play melody. And for Western music, it plays melody and harmony. And you can just kind of be the orchestra. And almost no other instrument can. Guitar would argue with you. Some instruments would argue that. But the reality is, it's an instrument where you can do it all. And I think ultimately that just, that's kind of what won me over to it over flute on it. And that endless repertoire. I mean, it's just endless on it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Barbara, you are truly inspiring to me, and you have been. I mean, I feel like I've known you forever, and I have, and you've been a good friend and colleague and mentor when I needed one, and really.
Well, Pam, that goes both ways.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
But, I hope that our viewers have gotten to know you and your story a little better, because sometimes we see luminaries in our field like you. And we think, oh, the path was straight, it was effortless, it was all clear. And I think what we've learned, maybe one of the things we've learned, is that you've been open to these opportunities. It wasn't linear. You learned something from each of those experiences, and you continue to learn. So I want to thank Dr. Barbara Fast for joining us today, and it's really been my honor to sit and just chat with you for a few minutes.
Well, thank you, Pam. Thank you.
The Frances Clark Center is a not-for-profit educational organization that serves the advancement of piano teaching, learning, and performing. Divisions include Piano Magazine, Piano Inspires Kids, Journal for Piano Research, National Conference on Keyboard Pedagogy, the New School for Music Study, Piano Education Press, International Online Teacher Education, and Piano Inspires Online Community Hub. Please visit us at pianoinspires.com to learn more about our impactful work and inspiring community.